Gooners in the gaming industry. It exists. Sometimes it's a simple low-level gooning, like asking fans to send you scantily drawn images of your video game character for your own personal collection. Other times it's straight up horrendous felony type things, like SA. Things like stealing nursing mother's milk. Some wild okay? I mean, in some cases, the culture got so bad, thousands of employees walked out of the company in protest. So for this video, there's 5 levels of gooning that we're gonna look into. And we're covering things like lighthearted, silly gooning incidences in the gaming development industry, and then going into some actual full-on degeneracy, mostly looking at things that have occurred in recent years. And level 5 is by far the worst and biggest category in this video, but let's start things off light. A couple of things we have to say before we really dive into this. This video had a lot to unpack in it. So you might also notice that we're occasionally wearing different clothes in different parts of the video because we actually recorded this across 4 different days because there was so much. We came up with the title of the video before we actually did the research and looked into the content. And man, does it get insane towards the end. Secondly, we have to put this out here, but everything discussed in this video is purely speculative and based on publicly available allegations and reports. We're not accusing anyone of crimes, nor are we confirming the guilt or innocence of any individuals involved. The video is intended for educational and commentary purposes only, and we encourage viewers to draw their own conclusions. A lot of this stuff is just Luke and I's opinion on how we interpret things. Due to YouTube content's guidelines, you might also notice we've censored certain words and phrases, even some that might seem like words you wouldn't need to censor, but that's YouTube for you.
Also, don't harass anyone mentioned in this video.
Yeah, just don't harass anyone. Listen, I'm recording this what I just said now at the end of everything that we record. It starts off really lighthearted, really fun, and then it just gets dark. Hang tight, it's gonna be a roller coaster. That being said, let's go ahead and start things off at level 1, which we're gonna call Goon Light. This is more like a couple of weird things, nothing like super salacious necessarily, but instances that are kind of like interesting, usually involving someone like a little more prominent, saying like something kind of interesting in an interview or on a social media post. Like for instance, I think we need to talk about Nier Automata, which already in itself, I feel like people can probably guess where things are going, but it was really interesting when this game first released because some of the conversations around the game were pretty unique to say the least. Apparently this rumor started circulating around on Twitter that the developers, Platinum Games, added a butt to the main character's model. I don't think this is actually true, but there was speculation prior to the game's release that this was going to be a feature in the game. It wasn't, but I think some of the developers were like slightly amused by the rumor circulating around. But then things got more interesting when the director of the game, Taro Yoko, decided to weigh in on the discussion of Nier Automata in a pretty unique way. He didn't directly comment on this specific instance, but he did open up the doors for something else, which I think is interesting. Let's look at this tweet. Probably can't read it unless you can read Japanese, but we'll translate it for you. Because of the brouhaha over 2B's butt, there are loads of rude drawings and whatnot being uploaded online. And since going around and collecting them is a pain, I'd like it if I could get them sent in a zip file every week. I don't think he realized he was opening the floodgates for a ton of content. Maybe he did know exactly. Getting the whole before compendium DM to him in zip form is a wild request to put out there, whether you're joking or not. And it did not take long before the community responded with exactly what he requested. We're not gonna like encourage anyone to go and look at the Twitter replies on the tweet. However, apparently he did get zip files sent to him also. He did eventually make a response just saying the internet is amazing. So I guess this is like a wholesome story. This video is gonna just get grossly worse as we go on. So this one in a weird way is just some fun Gooner light activity. It's gonna go downhill from here. Let's enjoy level 1 while we're in it. Frank O'Connor, the former lead at 343 Industries, responsible for bringing us gems like Halo 4, Halo 5 Guardians, and Halo Infinite. This one's kind of like an infamous one, so we had to talk about it. This actually comes from an interview with the Washington Post of all places, and they were talking about how 343 Industries receives tens of thousands of requests for collaborations from different IPs out there and different platforms to potentially use the Halo brand in something bigger or something better. And it's up to them to decide what Halo gets to show up in. So like Master Chief showing up in Fortnite, Frank O'Connor was a part of the team that made that decision to say that that was okay. There was a pitch that the team behind the Amazon TV show Secret Level made to 343 Industries requesting a cool crossover between the Master Chief and Doom for an episode. That idea was rejected by 343. Halo Wars 3, that got rejected. Halo Mega Bloks game, that got rejected. The Halo TV show on Paramount Plus, greenlit. Master Chief in Brawlhalla, greenlit. Master Chief on Chips Ahoy to promote Halo Infinite a year before it released because they timed the whole thing wrong without realizing the game was getting delayed, greenlit. So, what is the criteria that 343 and Frank O'Connor used? Frank O'Connor's not with 343 anymore, but back in the day, what was the criteria that they used to decide whether or not something was a good fit for the Halo brand? This is what Frank O'Connor had to say in the Washington Post. It's kind of like adult entertainment. You know it when you see it. What does that even mean? I mean, that doesn't even say like you know it's good when you see it. No. You just know it is what it is when you see it. I feel like that's a weird bar. A weird analogy also for choosing. I don't know if like the Washington Post just like pulled that one quote like completely out of context, but it definitely feels like it's in context.
I mean, what could the context be that makes it better? You know, that
Halo has had some more interesting gooner ideas. Like for instance, the whole Master Chief and Prisoner of War arc in the TV show. That was wild. Like I said, it's not like full on gooner status like we're going to get into in this video because there is some like yikes moments, but it's a good way to dip our toes into the gooner discussion. Another interesting, slightly related to Microsoft one is Notch from Minecraft. He never actually worked for Microsoft. He sold Minecraft to Microsoft. So there was an exchanging with Microsoft. So that's how it's related here. It's a good segue, okay? Like, cut me some slack.
how much did he get?
2.5 billion. Wow.
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 I mean, good for him. Get that bag, right? The interesting thing about Notch, though, is of course with the popularity of Minecraft, a lot of people maybe hyperfixate on like different things he would say. And there's been some interesting tweets, some controversial tweets. He might have tweeted about the size of his redstone torch, but there's been some like comedic things also. Like, I think it's more funny than anything. I know some people have run off and being like, this is full on gooner status here. What is Notch tweeting? He made Minecraft. How could he do this to us? But there was this image that was posted on Twitter and he replied to it with whoever that is, super. Wait, that doesn't even make sense.
You're right. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm trying to read it. I've never like actually like looked at it word for word. Whoever that is, super looks bad.
Also, I'm not sure if we can show what Notch was commenting on. I don't know if I want to subject our viewers to this, you know what I mean? Did you look at it?
I'm not logged into Twitter and it won't let me look at the reply to the post. It just forces me to log in.
I'll send it to you.
Oh, you can show it. It's not that bad.
It's disgusting. It's a car.
Hey. You know it when you see it. Notch has talked a little bit about his romantic life slightly when he was kind of like venting about some personal stuff. Another one that people like to pull up a lot and be like, look at this. He's a billionaire and he's sad sometimes. But he did tweet it in 2015, so like a decade ago. Found a great girl, but she's afraid of me and my lifestyle and went with a normal person instead. I don't really think that's incel posting like some people reacted to it as, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like more money, more problems, as a wise man once said.
So isn't that wise man the notorious B.I.G.?
This video is going off the rails. I was like, you know, we'll start the video out really formatted and then we'll do podcast. And now it's just already falling apart.
Oh, with this topic, how can it stay on?
I don't know what I expected. Now, to be fair, while this is just kind of like a little like meme here at this level, it gets into some serious stuff as we go on. Notch, with all of his money that he made, which is quite a bit of money, did end up buying a really fancy mansion in Beverly Hills. Rumor has it he did throw some crazy party. Who knows how crazy those parties went? We were never invited. Even though apparently Notch would invite a ton of YouTubers to those parties. We have yet to receive an invitation. Level 2 is where we start to get a little more interesting. Now, once again, nothing criminal at level 2. We save that for the later levels. But when it's like a little cringe, maybe a little amusing, really is probably the better word, where you're like, man, they're really just going all out here, aren't they? So we're gonna call level 2 mild to medium goonery. I feel like I like that. Luke, what do you got for us?
There's a lot of games that get like memed on for showing certain feed stuff. We talked about Halo 4 earlier. You know, there's the Cortana feed meme. Probably another invention by Frank O'Connor, the more we think about it, right? Like, I mean, easily Something he could have put in.
You know it when you see it.
Exactly. And there's some other notable games where I've seen, people just joking about a lot of foot stuff being included. But one person that recently has gotten a lot of jokes about him was Hideo Kojima. Because the new Death Stranding game has close-up feet scenes.
It's integral to the game, dude. You don't understand. This isn't just Death Stranding 2. This is Death Stranding 2 at the beach.
Then people just started going back. And then there's this clip of the actress that played Quiet in Metal Gear Solid 5 saying that she had to come in for like extensive foot scans.
They asked to scan my underneath my feet for a reference when I was at Kojima Production.
I just say what's going on here, you know what I mean? How detail-oriented are they with this? And the first Death Stranding also had some. And maybe we should watch this clip and pay attention to what the monster looks like and who the monster might look like here. Okay, so for some reason it zooms in on the feet. This monster appears. Oh.
Is that Hideo Kojima?
Yeah, it resembles him, right? It's his glasses. Like, what's going on here? He's grabbing the man's feet. I don't know.
Dude, he's a big Daryl Dixon fan.
I mean, hey, who isn't? But yeah, that was just one of the bigger examples I noticed recently. There's some other things over the years. Some maybe not as strong as these ones. But, you remember Resident Evil Village? You remember that big vampire lady? You remember how everyone on Twitter was very, very... excited for her, let's call it that, you know what I mean? And I remember people were really trying to figure out her shoe size for some reason.
Did they ever figure it out? I mean, we could sit down and look at the pictures and try to calculate it ourselves for the video.
Okay, let's pull it up, I guess. I'm gonna have to delete my search history. It's 17.3 inches. So apparently that's only size 13. Women's size?
That's pretty big for a women's shoe.
Is it? I don't know. I went like size 14 or 15, so I was like, huh?
I think it's pretty big for women's feet to be a size 13. I mean, can you buy size 13 shoes?
I didn't realize. I guess it's harder for women to get big shoes. I mean, you can just wear some Jordans.
You have to like special order size 13 shoes, like from websites probably, from what I can tell.
But if it's like specific women's shoes, if it's like bisexual shoes like Jordans.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Luke.
But there's more foot stuff. You remember the game Bayonetta? That game, focused a lot on her feet. Literally the gun high heels. Every time there's a combat sequence, there's a lot of feet flying around. So people, been very excited about that. But this isn't the only Nintendo-related one. There's actually some like fan service scenes, including feet stuff in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It came out on the Switch in 2017, 2018. I don't remember. The right date will be on the screen here. Well, then also another one I found in my research when I went deep on this foot game research, whatever. Final Fantasy X also came up, and there's this like dancing scene. And the more I looked into it, people focus on the feet in this dancing scene, but apparently this dancing scene is like in the story after the village was destroyed and like people died, and then she dances to like so their souls can travel over to like the I don't know where they go, the heaven or wherever they go in Final Fantasy.
I actually have one more about feet, and I wasn't going to include it, but while you're talking about it, I decided to pull it up. Now this technically falls outside of video game developers falling into the Gooner trap, but would you count a movie based on a video game falling into the Gooner trap?
Yeah, I mean, video game related.
What I want to know is, and this is for you to decide specifically.
Me or the viewer?
Either one, I don't care. One of you. Do you think what I'm going to send you or show you guys on the screen is the team working on the movie gooning out, or tactical fan service so that the movie performs better? All right, I'm going to send it to you. Ready?
Oh, what the hell?
We got Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie. There's a couple of instances where you get to see Sonic's bare feet. Never something you've officially gotten to do in-game, but they did do it in the movie. You know what's weird? It didn't take me long to find this at all.
I'm not surprised by that. Like, I stumbled across some like feed wikis and stuff trying to search for like some of this game stuff. So, and it's literally just people zooming in and taking pixelated screenshots of the feet in games. It's just like weird.
What is it, like a wiki feet?
Yeah, it's like wiki feet but for video games and anime. It was like called anime feet but also had video games or something. I don't know. Which I hope we never land on wiki feet. I don't think we've ever shown our feet. Or do we want to be on wiki feet? I mean,
depends how many more views will we get.
I don't know, dude. Maybe someone will donate. In this next one, I want to debunk something that a lot of people put this developer in and say he's a big a gooner for putting himself into this game, and that is Neil Druckmann in The Last of Us 2. And the game was leaked, like the full story was leaked before release. And in those leaks, I guess people figure out that there's a, like a intense private cuddling scene without clothes in the game. I don't know, I'm just trying to say in an ad-friendly way. And people started this rumor that this character is like a self-insert from Neil Druckmann himself, which, by the way, isn't even the character that ended up like having the scene. You know, it was a different character. And this rumor got so far that he himself responded saying, "No, it wasn't me. It was actually this actor. It is just this actor. I mean, the guy looks like the actor." A lot of people probably still believe it because they never saw the follow-up.
Gooner Gamer Energy debunked. Let's go.
One of the games me and Elijah checked out within the last 2 years was a little game called Snowbreak Containment Zone. And when we played it at launch, it was okay. It was pretty good gunplay, but a little like stale. It really didn't capture our attention. And I think that's how a lot of people felt. And they themselves realized that, because after this slow launch they had in 2023, they really leaned into the fan service. And there's reports that their revenue went up from $200,000 a month to $10 million a month because they started doing like a skimpy outfit. Everybody gets a maid outfit. You know, you can have like private sessions, foot massage them. But you pay your $10, $20, you get that, and you also get some good gunplay. So I guess it's a pretty good deal for most people. And there's a lot of games who lean into this. Goddess of Victory, Nikki game. I see ads for that all the time. That definitely leans into that. Azure Lane, and there's many more. I mean, it sells, I guess, and that's what these gacha games realized.
Now, I am curious, though, how long before Mecha Break starts leaning into fan service? A lot of people don't realize that Snowbreak Containment Zone and the studio that made Mecha Break are the same studio. It's like a Breakaverse or something. Like, they got Break in both of their names. So, I noticed Mecha Break doesn't seem to have a whole lot of fan service yet. But I do wonder if numbers start to slow down, they might start leaning into that as a part of their gameplay strategy.
Hey, and then maybe it's perfect time for us to check out Mecha Break.
It's on Xbox.
It's crossplay, it's free to play.
Not sponsored yet.
Wait to play it until they add the good stuff, okay? Don't play it yet.
Encourage them to add the good stuff. Now it's time we enter level 3, which we're calling the Goon Room. This is going to be like where things really heat up and we're maybe more confused with what the hell is going on and why. Like, we're just skimming like the massive level controversies that we'll get to in level 4 and then the big stuff in level 5. Let's start by talking about Skullgirls. There's this game series, it's like a fighting game called Skullgirls, developed by Lab Zero Games, and they had a lead designer named Mike Zymont. He already had some criticism in the past because he made some Black Lives Matter jokes that, I don't know, were a little wild, and then he apologized saying that he was making the jokes to show that he was standing in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. A confusing situation in itself. That got overshadowed with more weird stuff happening because, as it turned out, Mike Zymont was straight up doing some weird goon stuff on Twitter. It turned out that a Twitch streamer with the name Bunny had some conversations with Mike Zymont through DMs that apparently were a little cringy, inappropriate, weird, enough to make Bunny feel uncomfortable. And while, that could just be hearsay, the DMs got released. So we're going to go through them and read them to you. I'm going to recruit Luke here. You're going to play the role of Bunny, the Twitch streamer model.
All right.
And I will play the role of Mike Zymont.
Thank you for making a video game where is
tries to figure out how to respond to this. I'm glad you enjoy it. Yeah, question mark seems appropriate. There's a lot less of that type of thing than there was originally, because even fewer people would have taken it seriously otherwise. Witness Phila's unused timeout pose, which you can look up online. That's non-committal enough. Let's see who this person is. Oh, I think it's the lady who was streaming the game recently that I mistook Bun Jupiter for. Tongue out face. Visits the Twitter page. Whoa, you actually have a catch light eye light. That's some serious production values. I have so many questions I want to ask that I'm definitely not gonna ask. I'm happy SG is fun for you. Also, what is that profile picture?
This one, I think it's awesome. I understand though, I like DOA a lot, but it gets a lot of negative feedback for being too sexy. I love Philia though. Yep, I played Skullgirls 3 times on stream. I really love the style and played Eliza's story today. That's why I thank for the Yuri. Ask away. I'm a fan of the game so far. It's really cool and fun for sure.
Ah, yes. We had to add all the mummy wraps to Eliza's getting throne frames or we wouldn't have gotten the right rating. Also, some foam in her bath. Strangely, they said nothing about her other story mode art. Ask the questions. Well, okay. Are you putting on the high voice like lots of Japanese ladies do? Tongue sticking out face. What brought you to Skullgirls anyway? I guess you embraced the thirst culture, but like, isn't it weird? As definitely not anyone's fantasy, I don't know how I'd feel in your place. Did you start out with that as an aim? I'm genuinely curious.
My voice is real. It gets higher pitch when I'm excited, though. I'm cursed with it. I get that question a lot. I like fighting games. I've had an interest since I was a kid and wanted to revisit some for nostalgia. I found Skullgirls through recommendations from my fans. It doesn't bother me. Thirst is human nature. I started as a gravure-style model online and did modeling for maybe 3 years or so before retiring. I retired a year ago to pursue Twitch streaming. I'm used to thirst stuff from my job, and I'm a huge fan of H artists and the culture, so it really doesn't bother me.
Welp, sorry for asking the dumb common questions, tongue sticking out face. I know some other ladies like that. I bet it's annoying to get asked to put your parent on the phone. I suppose thirst definitely helps sub count and probably validation. If external validation is necessary, I'm embarrassed enough streaming at all, and I just like people, so I feel unqualified speaking here. I'm sorta curious what your family thinks of it, but that's dangerously close to the coy, what does your boyfriend think probe of you single, unsure face. It's just a world I'm so unfamiliar with. Gravure, the printing process? Oh, Google helped.
Is this guy real?
What do you mean?
Who talks like this?
Oh, the message keeps going on. You're aware of the prevalent problems with sexism in the FGC, I assume. Sorry about that in advance. Although the Skullgirls community in particular is better about it. Swiggly face? I don't know what face this is. Anyway, I don't mean to bother you. You're just kind of fascinating and unfamiliar. Well, that's a good, weird ending. Okay, so he didn't get a respond for like an hour and a half. So he responded again. I'm sure you get messages from humans with asking that kind of stuff pretty regularly. So if you prefer, how about I acknowledge the brain inside the lady? Smiley face. It takes a lot of skill and cunning and a certain amount of both integrity and ruthlessness to succeed at pretty much anything. So calculating successful person who owns herself, what's your end goal? Is streaming sustainable? Do you want to own a tech company or manufacture solar cells or grow cute flowers or what? I'd like to know what to prepare to invest in. Cheerful face. And that's all we got.
Is this guy, like, in the weirdest way, calling her and then asking to pay her for sex? Is this what this is leading to?
He's definitely trying to get into the territory where he can maybe try to make a move, I think. Honestly, it's so scary. Starting things off with an internal monologue that's typed out, like tries to figure out how to respond to this, is already insane. So while that was really cringe, right, to some people in the community, it actually didn't seem that out of character for Mike Zymont. For instance, a cosplayer and writer posted this video talking about their own experience.
This is like my 20 billionth take. I have not yet read Bunny's DMs. I don't know what Mike said to her. I'm sure it was shitty, and I know that because Mike's been making weird comments at me in and out of cosplay at fighting game events for actual years. And I've been writing a lot of it off because when I tell people, they're just like, oh, he's kind of like that, I'm sorry. And like, yeah, he is kind of like that, and he's kind of not changing for the past 5 years, y'all. And, like, neither is anyone else in the fighting game community, and I think a lot of it is because when I tell, like, my male friends or other TOs what's happening, they just kind of don't do anything with that information. If you find out that one of your friends is being absolutely weird or creepy to females in the community, you need to call them on it and actually hold them accountable.
Then apparently another lead animator and art director resigned from the company and said that while they considered Zymont a close friend and coworker for 10 years, they also went on to say that they tolerated years of comments, uncomfortable jokes, and unwanted hugs, and when confronted, Zymont blamed her for his behavior, citing it was how she dressed. I'm reading through an article from PC Gamer breaking down what happened, and it's like all of these people all resigned at the same time and then made statements about Mike. Animator Jonathan Kim, who also resigned that day, posted a similar statement saying Mike's behavior wasn't just scattered incidents, but actual systematic signs of his overall behavior and attitude as an individual. Artist Brian June said that Mike Z creates an unsafe work environment for everyone, and since he was the sole owner of Lab Zero Games, removing him from the company is difficult. And while he apparently originally agreed to leave, he was unwilling willing to make a reasonable compromise, and I think at the end of it all, Mike Z ended up retaining control over Lab Zero, despite him saying that he was actually leaving. His Twitter account does have the bio saying, game developer on the autism spectrum, Skullgirls, Indivisible, etc. Here I speak for myself. People kept asking, so, and then he links his Patreon, checked out his Patreon, and he gets $10.31 a month, and he hasn't posted since 2020. This might be a good segue. If you guys want to support our channel, check out our Patreon, link in the description down below.
Oh, no.
You can support our channel, or you can do the whole like YouTube membership thing. A great way to fund this channel, keep us going, because then we get to talk about stuff like this. Because I'm not sure how monetization is going to work on this video, especially with the later levels.
Me and Elijah, we were part of the Halo community at some point. If you're in the Halo community, you might know a mod called Halo SPV. It is like a remake of Halo CE, but it looks really bad.
People swear it looks amazing. I'm just saying, like, people swear by Halo SPV as the greatest Halo mod of all time. I think you're underselling how much people like that for some reason.
Right. Well, I was about to say, we did do a video on the greatest Halo mods that we thought were the greatest Halo mods, and we did not include SPV, and a lot of comments were upset about that, but the mod just doesn't look good. I don't know.
I'm not a fan already of, like, a game that's still the same game with, like, a new coat of paint thrown over it. And while there are some interesting things they've done with gameplay modifiers to make the game different, a lot of creative liberties that I feel like make the game a little too derivative for my personal tastes. I think that's a safe way to explain how I feel about it.
Well, talking about creative liberties, let's get into some of these creative liberties. Let's like talk about the reason that we first heard about this mod, and that was because they added some lore into the game via terminals that you can access, specifically on the level Keys. There is one where it's like Keys is in a monologue, or not in a monologue, Keys is like thoughts while he's being corrupted by the flood or something, right? And in that dialogue, there's some weird lines about his daughter. Let's actually feed it to ChatGPT to narrate it.
What? How? Where am I? Did I fall asleep? No. I couldn't have. We were on a mission. Weapons, the Covenant. Wait, no. I need to spread. I need to fly away. We have to escape. But to where? Earth? So many people, so much to feed on. What? Feed? I don't understand. I don't. Why would I think? People aren't food. A toolie. People are a tool. To spread, reproduce. We are stronger in numbers. Stronger to spread. Spread? No. I don't need to spread. Why do I want to spread? I want to reproduce. I don't need to reproduce. Miranda. I want to spread. I want to reproduce. I want her. So much knowledge. Her ship. No. Not my daughter. Why would I? Why would I want to do that to her? This isn't me. This is sick. She's great. Ideal. I want her here, inside of me, a part of me. Her ship, her weapons, her mind. It is mine. It will belong to me. No. Why do I want this? Not my daughter. Not my Miranda. These feelings. Why? Where are they coming from? This isn't me.
This part about Miranda in the middle, which is his daughter, if you don't know Halo lore, was interpreted by a lot of people as being a little insidious. I can't even say that word. The illegal act of doing something with a family member, basically. If I have to censor it, I don't know. I have to decide. But a lot of people were like, oh, wow. Ooh, this is kind of weird. And then the guy, the main developer of this, kind of got called out on this, and he doubled down in a Reddit post.
There's no plans to remove it now or in the future. It's just something certain right-wing agitators have spread to insinuate we are somehow condoning It's basically your typical Pizzagate/canon tactic or portraying people you don't like as sexual perverse deviants. The terminal itself is based on the terminal in HCEA where it shows the Flood taking over Key's mind and probing his thoughts to find new victims. Cut content from Halo 3 with a more explicit and charged angle which never made it into the final game. The Flood are of course based off the Xenomorph from Alien, which was also designed to a monster which preys on people's fears, such as the facehugger basically having a vagina-looking thing that sticks a penis down your throat and plants its seed. We built a lot of what we did off the Flood off the Xenomorph as we wanted to return to what Bungie intended with them, which is why our version of the Flood have combat forms which resemble the original hosts both in behavior as well as visuals. The terminal and the two others that accompany it, along with the dialogue in game, make it pretty clear the Flood are simply probing his mind and taking him over looking for victims, and that Key's dying thoughts of his daughter are being probed by the Flood as their own instincts to infect and spread are spilling over into Key's dying mind. You see the same thing happening in less horrific detail in the HCEA terminal. So no, the terminal is not our own fantasy of the Flood, and everything with it is rooted in existing lore, something that both Halopedia, Halo Canon, and a Bungie writer who will go unnamed have backed in the past. You can almost think of the Flood infection being like COVID, if COVID could direct your body to infect the people you care about most. The horror is not what they do to you, as much as what they will do to the people you love.
At the beginning, he's like, there's no plans to remove it now or in the future. But if you actually download the game today, they did alter the lines and it reads quite differently. It's not like that at all anymore, actually, now. He just talks about having a daughter and not necessarily about doing some with the daughter, you know? I guess, you know, he caved after all. Just a weird thing to put in the game because, like, I don't know. What was the intent for this?
Wasn't there a DM at some point or a post on Discord where the lead dev thought that was the best terminal that they put into the game? This is a little wild. I mean, it's... like I said, it feels a little derivative. And I know the argument that he made was like, that's what the original Halo developers intended, but they didn't put it in the game. So I don't know if it's what they intended, because it would have been in Halo if it was.
Yeah, and maybe they realized it's a dumb idea and then didn't put in the game. You know, that can also happen. Sometimes you have dumb ideas and then you don't act out on them.
Like Cortana turning evil and how Bungie thought that was a dumb idea.
Yeah, and then you make a whole trilogy about it.
Now we're going into level 4, which we're dubbing the Goon Zone. This one usually is instances of individual people with some pretty serious things, maybe some massive fallout, usually resulting in like firings or investigations at the least, or potentially legal action. I think a good example of being like something getting elevated to some sort of lawsuit is the classic Randy Pitchford USB incident. This story is really, really wild, and when it was unfolding, it was kind of insane. Randy Pitchford, the head of Gearbox, who was behind like the Borderlands game series and whatnot, definitely came out initially looking really, really awful, but the story is a lot more complex than what it initially maybe looked like. You see, all the way back in 2018, Gearbox had an in-house lawyer with the name of Wade Callender. However, in 2018, he ended up leaving the studio, and Gearbox actually filed a suit against him directly for fraud and breach of fiduciary. Is that the right way to say it? Fiduciary? Essentially, Gearbox was suggesting that Callender was misusing his corporate credit card, among other things, to go on vacation, to be a member of a gun club, and buying things to apparently get six-pack abs. A month later, though, Callender filed his own lawsuit against Gearbox and studio head Randy Pitchford. This lawsuit alleged that Randy Pitchford struck a deal in 2016 to receive a personal, secretive executive bonus of $12 million to be paid directly to Pitchford, and millions were being siphoned to Randy Pitchford's personal accounts instead of funding the development of games like Borderlands. However, amongst just that accusation in this lawsuit, there were more accusations about Randy Pitchford's role in a lot of different things, I guess. One being an event that was claimed to have happened in 2014, where Callender said Randy Pitchford left a USB drive at a Dallas, Texas restaurant. Not just any restaurant, mind you, a medieval times restaurant, which just adds like, you know, some atmosphere to the lore here. In this USB drive, there were sensitive corporate documents for Gearbox and its partners, including 2K Games, Sega, Sony, Microsoft, and others. Upon information and belief, Randy Pitchford's USB drive also contained Randy Pitchford's personal collection of COD points. Cheese pizza. Yikes. That's a pretty serious accusation, so obviously a lot of people were like, holy shit, this is terrible if true. And as it turned out, Randy Pitchford had already openly talked about losing the USB stick during a podcast that he was on, which was predated a year earlier to the lawsuit going out. According to Randy Pitchford's rebuttal, the camera girl in the video was of age, like 18 years old or something, but he wasn't, you know, sexually interested in it. No. He was interested in the magic behind it.
The memory stick somehow no longer was in my possession.
Oh, God.
And it was discovered, it was actually at a Medieval Times. Apparently some kid, an employee of the Medieval Times, and discovered secrets of my company and future games in development, and also discovered the pornography. It was barely legal. Like this girl's handle was only 18, and this one is just like I can't quite make sense of what the little thumbnail image is. So I'm looking into it, and it's a woman who is married, and when she has some experience that appears as if she's having an orgasm, a huge amount of fluid comes out of her. She has some kind of an explosive orgasm.
Hey, Jay.
This is not a sex worker. This is a fucking magician. And so apparently what you can do is they make videos and they sell them. And so I purchased one of her videos. I wanted to watch this.
You wanted to work out the method.
I wanted to work out the method, but it was late, so I copied it over to this memory stick, and I go on my way. It turns out it was a magic trick. Like she's like it's a combination of camera work and sleight of hand. and I never saw like a turkey baster or whatever it was that she was using to deliver the fluid.
goods, yeah.
But there was some method here that was like, oh my God, this is genius. It was super clever. So when he delivered this memory stick to the studio, I was on a business trip. I was out of town. So my executive assistant decides she's going to look at the contents as well.
Oh, God.
And so then before I know it, I think the entire office looked at it.
Oh, no.
And there was one piece of content on here, and it never occurred to any of them that the reason why there was just that single point was because of the magic trick.
Then Randy Pitchford did go on Twitter and made an official statement saying that the attacks made by my former friend and colleague have no basis in reality or law. He's simply trying to shake me down for money. We will win, but because lawsuits are pending, I can't comment as much as I'd like. I'm shocked by his lies. Thank you for your love and support. So then after that, Gearbox kind of went all out on the offense against the lawsuit. They responded to a lot of the story-breaking articles that were out there, making another statement saying that Gearbox will be filing a grievance with the State Bar of Texas against our former general counsel Wade for disciplinary proceedings for filing a lawsuit that includes accusations that he knows to be untrue. The lawyer's rules of professional conduct expressly prohibit the filing of documents that are knowingly false. The tell is within Wade's claim itself. His use of hedged lawyer language and clever application of quotation marks betray that he knows that the impression he is trying to create is based in lies. We imagine that he used the quotation marks and lawyer language in hopes that will give him some angles of defense when we inevitably take action against him for false statements. Wade is engaged in a shakedown, and he's clearly using deceit and lies to try to cause damage by promoting a narrative that he knows is false. This then culminated to Calendar filing more motions to try to hold Randy Pitchford in contempt for like apparently hiding stuff during the discovery phase. It's a little confusing, but it all culminated to October 3rd, 2019, where the resolution was reached, I guess. And it's not really exciting or thorough at all, but apparently Randy Pitchford and Gearbox reached an agreement with Wade Calendar to drop both lawsuits against each other. There was a joint statement made between Calendar, Randy Pitchford, and Gearbox saying, upon review of all the evidence in the case, it was of the opinion of counsel that the evidence exonerated Randy Pitchford from the allegations against him. All misunderstandings, crazy word to use here, between the parties have been corrected and apologies were exchanged. They said they were sorry because the parties are mutually bound by confidentiality. No additional statements will be forthcoming. And that's kind of where the story ended. A little bit of a wild ride. Now, obviously, we'll never fully have all of the details, but I do want to say it is always a little sus when some lawyer is being sued by a company who already had left the studio, stating that they like used the company credit card inappropriately. And then his response is like, look at what he did. Look at all these other things. It is a lot. So I don't know. What do you think, Luke?
I don't think Randy Pitchford is guilty of the COD point stuff.
No, I don't think so either. They were just magic videos, dude. Now, I think the real question here, right? Like, why do you save videos? Like, who's actually saving videos like onto their computer or a USB stick? You know what I mean? Like that is some like gooner behavior, sure, but that's also some boomer behavior, I think.
I mean, he is 50 years old.
Do you think he has like a bunch of floppy disks with weird videos on them too? Magic videos?
Yeah.
I don't know, that's crazy. We need to talk about Bungie next, because while the accusations are very, very serious, Bungie in the past has had a reputation of forcing their team out of positions at the company. Like historically speaking, if you've looked at Bungie's history, you will find that especially after the Halo era, there's been a lot of weird instances of employees who have been at the company for a long time being forced out for various reasons. This would be one of the first times, though, that a high-level employee was removed after alleged inappropriate behavior towards female employees. If you've been following Bungie for a long time, you know Chris Barrett had been integral in the Halo series. He was a Destiny director, and he was actually the director for Marathon. Earlier on in 2024, Chris Barrett was fired from Bungie. And while there were a lot of rumors circulating that Barrett was fired due to inappropriate conduct, it wouldn't actually surface until there was a report made stating that at least 8 female employees came forward reporting that Barrett had made them feel uncomfortable and that he behaved inappropriately toward them. According to Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, the investigation revealed that Barrett had called lower-level female employees attractive, asked them to play Truth or Dare, and made references to his wealth and power within the studio, suggesting that he could help advance their careers. Barrett would respond to the allegations, saying he apologized if he made some employees feel uncomfortable, but also stated that he always conducted himself with integrity and been respectful and supportive of his colleagues. So after Chris Barrett was fired and the story broke, Chris Barrett was kind of silent online for a while, but months later, he did finally update his following on Twitter about his intention to sue Bungie, claiming that he was wrongfully fired in an attempt to prevent him from receiving a $45 million payout following Sony's acquisition of Bungie in 2022. According to these counter allegations from Chris Barrett, Bungie and Sony accused him of misconduct without providing concrete evidence, and then he went on to claim that his firing was not based on any legitimate wrongdoings and instead a strategic move to cut costs and shift the blame amid Bungie already having a lot of internal struggles. He went on to say the past 9 months following his departure from Bungie had been very difficult and painful as he had to endure rampant speculation, unfounded attacks on his reputation, and innuendos about what happened behind the scenes to cause him to be fired after 25 years of loyal service. He eagerly awaited the opportunity to get the truth out there and tell his side of the story. So then there were people being like, hey, look at the Randy Pitchford incident. A lot of information can still come out. And it's not like Chris Barrett really had a platform to defend himself, especially going into legal instances where you probably can't talk about what's going on in a legal battle. It's maybe not best practice. But then Sony clapped back. Sony actually decided to share examples of some of those text messages that Chris Barrett had sent out, which then resulted in his firing, claiming that he was fired for this reason, not because they were trying to get him out of him getting like a bonus that he was supposed to get. They did an internal investigation and they found that his behavior was consistent and that he targeted those lower level female employees. There were 9 written communication examples that were through text messages or DMs. For instance, messages like, I hope your boyfriend doesn't mind I text you a lot, and I just worry, like I really enjoy texting you and talking. I don't want him to get the right idea. Apparently later when this victim told Barrett she was busy, Barrett said, I want your attention, so annoying. Then apparently he called her when he was drunk and talked intimate details about his personal life and asked about her and what her type was. Chris Barrett's legal team actually responded to some of these message examples that ended up surfacing from this filing, saying that Sony continues to disingenuously cherry-pick text messages and alleged conversations to make unsupported and conclusory statements to defame Christopher and justify terminating him to avoid paying him what he was owed under his employment agreements. It is telling that Sony does not include the full text messages as exhibits or the full content of these conversations, and nothing in Sony's response provides a legitimate legal or factual basis to terminate Christopher for cause. Christopher is confident that when all the evidence is presented, it will be clear that Sony engaged in a scheme to strip him of his role and the equity awards he earned for his 25 years of loyal service to the company. There were a lot of other text messages that were revealed by Sony during this whole course, and it's a lot to unpack. Sony has made a motion to dismiss 6 of the 7 lawsuit claims, so this is still ongoing, and it'll be interesting to see what happens during the discovery phase and how far this actually goes lawsuit-wise. And maybe there'll be some clarity, because these are some pretty serious accusations. I would hope you wouldn't see a company ousting someone just for financial gain, but we have seen companies do some really shit things in the past. If it is real toxic behavior, which it very well could be, then damn, it sucks to see someone who was well known for making some really great games be such a shit person. So I don't know how to feel about it.
I guess his punishment is losing $50 million. It's pretty hefty punishment, So Jess Cliff, one of the co-creators of Counter-Strike, was arrested in 2018 on allegations of... And following that arrest, he was suspended from his job at Valve. According to reports, though, Clive allegedly met with a girl, which he met on an adult online site. He stated that he believed he was using a matchmaking service on an adult dating website and thought that the girl was 23 years old. The girl claimed, though, that Clive illegally videotaped their encounter against her will, which Clive also denied. Clive later stated on Reddit that he never recorded the person and that he passed a polygraph test on the subject. He also handed over his phone to the police to confirm that there was no recording made. After all of that, he entered an Alford plea, which is a plea where the defendant maintains innocence, but acknowledges that the prosecution has enough evidence to convict them. So he entered the Alford plea for a reduced charge of... And as part of this deal, he spent 57 days in a minimum security facility. And then he also stated that he believed he was catfished on this adult website. And after all that, we never heard anything from him again. Just disappeared. And obviously he wasn't reinstated at Valve. So Ubisoft as a company has a lot of controversies when it comes to their game and other things that, kind of involve the company culture, which we're going to get into later on level 5. But since on level 4, we're focusing more on individuals, there's one individual of the name Ashraf Ismail that had a more personal fallout at Ubisoft. He joined Ubisoft back in 2009 and served as the game director for Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Origins, and also Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So he was involved in like a lot of Assassin's Creed games over the years. In June of 2020, multiple women publicly accused Ashraf Ismail of marital infidelity. And basically these allegations centered around him abusing his power within the company, like his status, promising like he can advance their career if they sleep with him and stuff like that. Apparently he also lied about being married to them and pursued like multiple romantic relationships with fans even, not just employees. A few days after this came out, he did actually step down from Valhalla and announced his departure publicly from the project. He didn't say it was because of the allegations. Obviously he didn't admit to any of that. He said that it was for personal reasons. Now Ubisoft as a company, they wanted to do their due diligence, so they launched an internal investigation into the misconduct allegations, which by August concluded with him being terminated from the company. So, after he resigned, they later on would terminate him, meaning they probably concluded that he had broken his contract. And after that, for like a year or something, we didn't hear anything from the guy until he joined a studio actually in June of 2021. A studio that was built by Tencent in Montreal, which was a new studio created for making games. So they haven't released a game, but apparently he's a consulting creative director there. And this led to a lot of people being like, wow, this guy got terminated for all this weird stuff and now he has another job. Which, does seem a little unfair, but I mean, it's all alleged, I guess.
Around the same time that this whole thing was falling out over at Ubisoft, it seemed like that wasn't the only developers coming under fire, because Chris Avellone, who some of you may have known him as working behind the scenes on games like Fallout 2, he worked on Fallout New Vegas, he worked on other games like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and a bunch of other games. So it came to a surprise to many people when there were accusations of SA, and this one gets a little bit wild, but let's look at what the accusations were. There were two main people who made accusations that were kind of zeroed in on, though a couple more people may have like corroborated parts of the story. It's a little hard to follow now because a lot of tweets have been taken down. What's important to remember is that Carissa Barrows and Kelly Ray Bristol, both women who were in the industry, made accusations online suggesting that Avalon was a little bit of a creep maybe. Apparently he was like trying to get women drunk at certain industry events. There were reports of him people and other things without consent. Apparently he would try to leverage his status in the game industry to try to get people like interested in him and prey on women younger than him, like flashing his like company credit card around and buying drinks for people and continuing to encourage people to drink even if they didn't want to drink. But things get interesting because Avalon, despite the fact that he had all of these big accusations against him, and there was some pretty big fallout about it, as Dying Light's studio actually announced that they would be cutting ties because of the fallout of this. Now, it did say that both Avalon and the studio had decided to cut ties together. It wasn't a one-sided thing. It sounds like he got, cut off from the game. But what's interesting is Avalon rejected these statements and then went ahead to file libel lawsuits against two of the main women who were making these accusations. And it seemed like they reached a settlement in his favor. While he did the whole typical, issue an apology on Twitter, he didn't go into any of the details specifically originally, but after the libel lawsuit was launched, Avalon went straight on with a post to Medium saying that he had filed a libel lawsuit in California against at least two of the accusers. And in March of 2023, the settlement was reached, which would include apparently a 7-figure payout to him for damages that were caused, along with a joint statement from the two women who had made the accusations, saying that they misrepresented the events, and went on to clarify that Avalon never SA'd either of them. They had no knowledge of him ever SAing any women. In the statement, they even went on to say that anything that they had previously said or written about Mr. Avalon, to the contrary, was not their intent. They wanted to support women in the industry, and in so doing, our words have been misinterpreted to suggest specific allegations of misconduct that were neither expressed nor intended. It is a little bit interesting. I really wonder what happened behind closed doors when it came down to the actual legal proceedings here, because this is like a really big step back coming from what these original accusations were to what their response was after they were hit with a libel lawsuit. The fact that a settlement was reached for 7 figures is a lot of money for a settlement to avoid things going to an actual trial. So it is weird. It seemed like the legal team supporting Chris Avellone must have believed that this was a slam dunk case, and the legal team defending Barrows and Bristol must have thought that settling it was the best path forward. So really, really weird one, and I'm not sure how to feel about it. Maybe the victims just didn't want to deal with crazy legal proceedings and risk like further bankruptcy from something like this. So it's a really, really hard thing to try to unpack, I think. But Chris Avalon's back to making games, so I don't know.
There are gamers and sometimes streamers that cheat in online games. They use aimbots, wall hacks, spin hacks. But why cheat in a video game when you can cheat in real life? And that brings us to Dr. Disrespect, which brings us to his infamous Twitch ban in 2020. Now, the mystery surrounding his Twitch ban was a massive mystery in 2020. You know, everybody was like wondering what happened. He was like one of the most popular streamers. How can he be banned? And for years, nobody knew. It was all just speculation. Was Twitch trying to get out of the contract to save money? Were they in financial troubles? Did Dr. Disrespect do something? Well, in 2024, we kind of found out what happened. A former Twitch employee alleged publicly on Twitter that Dr. Disrespect got banned for messaging on the Twitch Whisper chat window thing that they have on the website. I don't know. People were like questioning, was this credible? What's going on? Dr. Disrespect actually, and I mean, I'm sure many of you remember this, admitted publicly to inappropriately sending messages to this minor in 2017 via Whispers. And he maintained that nothing illegal happened. There was no pictures shared, and he never intended to meet the individual. It didn't stop there because he was removed from his own game studio that he co-founded called Midnight Society, which now their project is shut down. I think we talked about it in one of our shutdown games video like a while ago. What was that game called again? Dead Drop or some dumb
Dead Rop.
But his career, I don't know, it is kind of in this weird thing where he still gets a decent amount of viewers on YouTube now, and it didn't really hurt his career that much. So I don't know, maybe him admitting to it, but saying it wasn't like in a sexual way, kind of saved him. I don't know, but he did take the statement down later, so I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
Now we're getting into the heavy hitters. We're not quite to level 5, but we are circling around it. And in level 5, we are going to do a big section dedicated to the massive fallout that happened at Activision. But before we can do that, there were 2 instances directly from individuals that I think are relevant first because they had big impacts and implications in the games that they were working on. So we need to talk about the Overwatch character Cassidy. Now, if you've played Overwatch for more than a couple of years, you will know that Cassidy's name wasn't always Cassidy. It was actually McCree, whose namesake was taken from a developer, a lead game designer, Jesse McCree. As Activision was faced with a huge harassment lawsuit from the state of California, a lot of people were implicated during this process, one of them being Jesse McCree, who would be removed from the company, and this led to a ton of discussion as to what Overwatch was going to do moving forward. While we'll get more into detail as to what exactly Jesse McCree did during the whole Activision part, let's just talk about what Overwatch ended up doing. It was actually the community that initiated doing something specifically, as some of the Overwatch League commentators and casters decided that it could be maybe in best practice for Overwatch to maybe not make a reference to McCree anymore as a character name. During a lot of the League events, many of the casters actually stopped referring to the character as McCree and started referring to the character as the Cowboy. This was kind of initiated by casters like Bren and Sideshow, but it quickly picked up by other members in the community, and it seemed like the team that was going to continue to work on Overwatch agreed later on in an update. The character's name was completely renamed to Cassidy with a lore explanation that Cassidy formerly had taken on the name of an outlaw, but decided that now was the time to start going by his true name and leave the outlaw name behind. So kind of a funny meme, a little bit wild. Similarly, also under the Activision Blizzard event that happened, this World of Warcraft had a developer who was also implicated in one of the big things that we're going to talk about. He had a bunch of references to his name, and all references to him remained in the game for a little while. Eventually, World of Warcraft did an update and removed characters that were named after him, the items that were named after him. He was also just gone. That being said, this leads us right into the big big entrance. We're going into the depths. We're now in level 5, where we have the maximum gooning status here. And I think we have to talk about the big Activision Blizzard fallout. It seemed like Activision Blizzard, for quite a long time, had a very, very toxic workplace. However, things finally came to light when in 2021, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing filed an official lawsuit accusing Activision Blizzard of fostering a frat boy culture that had things like gender discrimination, sexist jokes, and retaliation specifically against women who would potentially try to report these happenings. In the lawsuit, there were details of some of these things that were commonplace in the offices at Activision Blizzard. Things like cube crawls, where men would be like drinking and crawling through cubicles and harassing women along the way. During a Blizzard event in 2013, there was a hotel room that they dubbed the Cosby Suite, which was a reference to Bill Cosby's legacy, I guess. He was originally convicted of SA in 2018, but in 2021 it was overturned, stating a mistrial. There were a lot of names implicated during this lawsuit. The Blizzard president, J. Allen Brack, was implicated. Alex Afrasiabi, I don't know if I said his name right, the guy from World of Warcraft we just talked about, he was implicated. Our McCree inspiration, I guess, this guy, the face of McCree, he was implicated, and there were other names implicated as well. This ended up being a really big deal, and finally, it seemed like with this official lawsuit picking up momentum, Activision did like one of those PR spins and like made a statement. Despite the fact that this was a long list of accusations, they actually started off with the defense right out the gate. The DFEH includes distorted and in many cases false depictions of Blizzard's past. We've been extremely cooperative with the DFEH throughout their investigation, including providing them with extensive data and ample documentation, but they refused to inform us what issues they perceived. Also, the lawsuit claimed that in one instance, an employee died from suicide after potential harassment that they received. This showed up in the lawsuit directly. Really awful stuff. Activision went on to say, "We are sickened by the reprehensible conduct of the DFEH to drag into the complaint the tragic suicide of an employee whose passing has no bearing whatsoever on this case, with no regard for her grieving family. While we find this behavior to be disgraceful and unprofessional, it is unfortunately an example of how they have conducted themselves throughout the course of their investigation. It is this type of irresponsible behavior from unaccountable state bureaucrats that are driving many of the state's best businesses out of California." The employees themselves were not happy with the way Activision was continuously handling things just to try to save face with how bad things had been over the last multiple years, potentially decades. They actually did a full-on virtual walkout. Mind you, this is 2021, so a lot of people were working virtually. And as it turned out, 2,600 staff members ended up signing a letter which denounced the company's response. After the backlash from the walkout, it did seem like maybe some of the Activision higher-ups were like, okay, maybe we didn't handle this correctly. And Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision, did say the initial reaction seemed tone-deaf and promised reforms across the board. J. Allen Brack, the president of Blizzard, ended up resigning. This was just the beginning. More and more revelations of the toxic behavior and other types of corruptness and terrible stuff that were happening behind the doors at Activision and Blizzard would continue to surface. The details just kept getting worse and worse. A former Blizzard security analyst, Stephanie Krutzik, posted on Twitter saying that she pumped breast milk in 2008 and stored it in the communal fridge just to return and find it stolen. She described how it was clearly labeled and the only milk present, but it vanished, and nobody was ever identified. She also said that male coworkers were responsible and that HR did nothing to address the loss. However, this doesn't seem like it was a one-time event. This is just one person reporting it, but apparently things in the milk side of things at Activision had gotten so bad that a worker committee in 2022 publicly demanded improved lactation room access, storage, and privacy protection, stating that there were multiple reports of stolen milk and male employees entering lactation spaces for meetings. So I don't know, this one is actually insane, like really just like, I don't even know. I don't know. This is terrible. There was a Wall Street Journal report suggesting that leadership knew about instances and failed to actually act on them. There was a SEC investigation that opened up into management disclosures. Another lawsuit was filed in September of 2021 alleging pervasive harassment, and a shareholders lawsuit emerged accusing leaders of hiding problems that hurt the company's value. It was really, really a crazy time for Activision. I mean, When it came to new games that were releasing during the time of all of these revelations, Activision in the marketing side of things was even removing their own logo from things. Like the Call of Duty that released that year had Activision's name kind of reduced significantly in much of the marketing material. 20 employees ended up exiting the company and 44 were disciplined as there was a larger internal review that had started up. And the family of one of the former employees who died by suicide did end up filing a wrongful death suit in March of 2022. By 2023, Activision Blizzard and the DFEH ended up settling for $54 million, but Activision Blizzard did not have to make an admission of guilt.
So Activision Blizzard wasn't the only company that had to pay a big payout for their company culture. Riot Games, the studio behind League of Legends, actually was at the center of a massive controversy that ultimately cost them $100 million. Now, this began in 2018 when allegations surfaced that the company had a deeply toxic work culture. Women were frequently objectified and, had to do degrading behavior in order to earn status within the company. They had to pretend to like all the jokes about vacation, all this stuff, otherwise they would have been labeled as snobby and they would have lost their status within the company and they wouldn't have been able to advance. But one particular disturbing example was an internal email chain titled Riot Games Hottest Women Employees, where female staff members were ranked based off their looks. Some women also reported that they received unsolicited pictures of male. And there was even allegations that a male employee had made comments about and a female coworker. Now, this went as far as a lot of the managers, the people in charge of dealing with the employees, were part of this and were in on this. Now, this also was reflected in the payment or the pay scale for women. Women in the same position would make a lot less than the male counterparts. And I know that's a big discussion, but at least for Riot Games, it was true. The same position did not get the same payment. Some were even made to have to do jobs above their pay grade. So they were underpaid but had a higher job title. They were hired at one job title and then were pushed into a position that was higher, but they didn't get a higher pay. And eventually there was a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit, and Riot initially settled for this in 2019 for $10 million. But California, actually, specifically the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, alongside with the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement, argued that $10 million is not enough. So they pushed for a higher payout, since this was such a horrendous and systemic case of, company or, deep-rooted issues within the company culture. Also, Riot Games was trying to push people into signing, what is called arbitrations, which is an NDA where they just take a little payout and can't talk about it publicly, right?
Yeah, unofficial settlement type thing. Or a non-legal settlement. It's like a contract.
This escalated lawsuit with the state of California essentially went on till 2023 when Riot Games would settle for $100 million, which $80 million of that went to around 1,600 women affected by the company's practices. So there was 1,600 women that got paid out because the toxic culture was so bad, which is an insane amount. Just think about 1,600 people. And it cost them a lot. It cost them double the amount that Activision had to pay. And maybe doesn't mean the Activision stuff was less worse or this is worse. I don't think you can weigh this against each other. But it's just insane how many people were affected by this in a company this big. And same goes for Activision. And since then, Riot Games did do a lot of internal HR reforms and stuff like that. And apparently the company is better now and they got rid of all the toxic workplace stuff and, it's better now. So I guess that's also a good thing that came from this on top of the settlement.
Allegedly better. Okay, this next one is really, really confusing. I still am trying to wrap my head around all of the details because the lore runs deep here. And it is a little bit of a confusing tale. So I'm gonna do my best to explain it. It involves more people, not necessarily an individual studio, but there are a lot of moving parts and people. So we put it here in level 5, but maybe I can try to recount this the best I can, and then you guys can let me know if I'm interpreting this correctly. So this one comes from one of the lead developers on the game Night in the Woods, and there were accusations against the developer Alec Holoka. There's a lot of people involved here with this incident, so we're gonna try to break down who's who So on one end, we had Alec Holoka, one of the lead designers on the game. There's Zoe Quinn, who is another game developer. There's Nathan Grayson, who's a journalist who wrote 3 articles about her game, It's Not Okay, Cupid. So now that we have these people explained, let's try to put together this timeline of what happened. Some of you might remember the whole Gamergate incident that happened like a decade ago. It was wild times, a lot of like unorganized chaos, just a lot of like harassment across the board. Interesting commentary about like games going woke and stuff like that during that time also, but a lot of any type of genuine civil discourse would be overshadowed by like doxing threats and harassment from like people on 4chan and 8chan just kind of going nuts and you know how it always gets on internet discourse. One thing to remember with this story is that Zoe Quinn is one of the main people who was kind of at the center of a lot of the Gamergate controversy, and a lot of harassment was sent her way during that time. In 2014, Grayson, that journalist, and Quinn announced that they're in a relationship together. However, there was some speculation that suggests that they were already friends or really close to each other back when Grayson wrote articles that were covering Quinn's game, which would suggest that there's an ethical breach being a journalist and maybe having a bias without disclosing that in the articles, which then gave the game some extra press. However, some of this has been disproven / like amended or updated. There was definitely speculation from the community during this time, and this was a big part of the whole Gamergate thing initially. Nonetheless, Quinn is kind of at the forefront of all of this Gamergate stuff. There was still a large community against any type of public figure that was like promoting feminism and inclusivity in games, especially during that time. Shortly after some of this discussion started, a software engineer with the name Iran Gyoji, I don't know if I said his name right, he makes a blog post detailing his relationship with Quinn and then name drops 3 people that he claimed Quinn cheated on him with, one of those being that journalist Grayson. This is titled The Quinn Blog Post, and this ends up getting signal boosted by a lot of commentators online, people talking about it, like the late Total Biscuit commentated on this a bit. This ends up sending even more harassment towards Quinn, and Quinn ends up filing a motion to get a legal abuse protection order from Iran Gyoji and uses some of this harassment almost as like fuel or motivation to start a network known as Crash Override, which focuses on trying to prevent online abuse. With that backstory in mind, it becomes relevant a few years later though, because in a post online, Quinn posts about abuse she received from a different relationship that she was in, recalling her time with her then boyfriend Alec Holoka, the developer from Night in the Woods, making claims that he was manipulative, that he isolated her in his Winnipeg apartment and she wasn't allowed to leave. The studio behind A Night in the Woods ended up cutting ties from Alec Holoka after these accusations came to light. There were already critics right away looking into Quinn's story to want to pick it apart, contesting that her tweets back then showed that she was going out to comedy clubs and other things, potentially trying to poke holes in her timeline from her accusations against Holoka. An example of this is like when she was retelling her alleged abuse that she received, she said that she had to get outside help to get a flight away from Winnipeg. However, there were tweets at that time suggesting that she had the trip planned out already ahead of time and the flight wasn't like an emergency escape, but one that was planned potentially 10 days earlier. And then it was also suggested that they continued working together, or at least being cordial to one another online, even after her so-called quote-unquote escape. Though while this part might seem relevant here, it is important to point out that many abuse survivors continue interacting with their abusers due to fear, emotional manipulation, or like social entanglement. A lot of times, survivors don't feel safe to speak up until years later. Now, of course, with the height of the Me Too movement, some critics pointed out that it seemed like, at the very least, Alec Holoka might have been canceled without at least receiving due process or a thorough investigation, because the studio he was working for cut ties incredibly quickly, which potentially could lead to like dangerous, unsubstantialized discourse in how things like this are handled. However, on the flip side of things, the team that cut ties with him did make a post stating that there already was tension due to other things regarding his behavior, and it seemed likely that Quinn's allegations were really just kind of the catalyst to them cutting ties with him. That was probably something potentially already going to happen either way. This whole incident is really tricky because Gamergate was such a big thing, and Quinn was kind of rooted in the center of it, so there was already a bunch of people ready to pick apart her character. But at the same time, past controversies can't inherently discredit future claims of abuse, right? However, 4 days later, after the studio had cut ties with him and the allegations had come to light, Holoka died by suicide. Over on Twitter, Holoka's sister actually posted a little bit about her brother, saying that he had been battling mood and personality disorders through his life and was a victim of abuse. She also went on to explain that he was trying to correct his own disorders through therapy and medication, and also said that he had wished the best for Zoe and everyone. Definitely just like a really difficult story to unpack and understand, but I do feel like it's relevant in a video like this because it was one of those really big catalytic moments of victims coming forward talking about abuse that they've received in the industry. The hard part about unpacking this one is because the Gamergate association with it runs so deep. And like, I mean, if you just look at the Wikipedia page for Gamergate, like it is like a book. But I feel like we needed to talk about it. I mean, we knew when we were doing this video, we had to include some lighthearted ones at the beginning. Like, I wish we could go back to the earlier part of the video where we were just talking about like, you know, some feet video games or something like that, because this stuff gets heavy.
Let me go into this Roblox. Really fun.
Good luck. Roblox. Let's go.
Just like a little under 2 years ago, a prominent Roblox developer was actually sentenced to 15 years in prison. What he actually did is actually crazy or insane or deviant. I don't know what he calls, like horrendous. So he went by the name as Dr. Rofatnik, like a play on Dr. Robotnik, I guess. I don't even know what to take for this, but his real name is Arnold Castillo. Now, he used his influence and the popularity of the games he would develop to gain access to girls. This went as far as him paying for an Uber to transport one of his victims 700 miles across the country. You know, obviously a going missing, raised a lot of concerns. So the parents reported her, and this led to like a multi-state manhunt and stuff like that. And eventually they were able to track her down and find her at Castillo's home. He was arrested after that, and then it took like a little while, and he eventually would plead guilty to charges of transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, and he was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison because of that. It's just like it's like the craziest thing that ever happened with a Roblox developer. But I think Roblox is also notorious for having a lot of on the side and stuff like that, which makes it even weirder that they're trying to add a dating feature to Roblox. You heard of that?
Did hear about that. It's like 18 plus dating, right?
17 plus.
What? Why does it start with a age and then go into...
So I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think Roblox is a good platform to start a dating website. So we talked about one Ubisoft employee earlier, and that was more of a studio specific employee, not like a higher up at just Ubisoft in general. But in the summer of 2020, Ubisoft also as a company was hit by a wave of sexual misconduct and abuse allegations. This wasn't like individual incidents. This was more like high level executives like abusing people. There was like 3 main people that were accused of stuff. The first one was Sergei Heskuet. I don't know, I can't pronounce his name. Chief Creative Officer. He was like accused of lewd behavior, sexual questions all the time, sexual harassments. Then there was a game director that was, not just at one studio, that was part of many Ubisoft games. He was like accused of psychological harassment and like really like weird behavior, and even maybe like lighting a man's beard on fire. But then the third guy by the name Tommy Francois, he was the most devious one out of all these 3. The stuff he was accused of was actually insane. So there was many accusations made against this guy. Allegedly, he kept watching pornographic films in the open office, like just the class window offices. He just kept sitting there watching porn. Apparently also many times planted surprise kisses on employees unwanted. One time a female employee was wearing a skirt and he forced her to do a hand scan, and like lots of just like weird like assault situations. And even like I found this French article and I was trying to translate it, and from my understanding, and I found some info on this on Reddit, he would also play a game called Cat in French, and basically that means it's like catch, but you catch each other's genitals, and he would force people to play that. An absolute demon. Like just insane behavior. Also, apparently a bunch of them were racist on top of all that. In summer of 2020, like shortly after this all was like alleged and came out, most of them resigned from the company, and some were put on administrative leave and actually later dismissed. So there was also 2 other people who had to resign because of this, and those were, I think, HR related. And actually an internal Ubisoft audit reportedly concluded that there was effectively no HR policy on sexual harassment until 2020. I guess that's why they didn't do anything, because there was no policy against the stuff they were doing, and I guess they were taking advantage of that, which is actually even more insane. Ubisoft CEO responded saying that he feels like it's his obligation to guarantee a safe and inclusive workspace environment, and he said he was going to launch a bunch of investigations, but a lot of employees felt like there wasn't like a lot. I mean, I don't know. They wanted more changes. It's really not clear whatever came of this, like the internal Ubisoft changes, but I guess we haven't heard any allegations like this in like 5 years, so I guess maybe something changed. Maybe they finally hired an HR department that's better. But for the individuals that actually were fired, 3 of them were sentenced in 2025, just this month actually. They were charged with workplace harassment, and one of them was actually charged for attempted sexual assault. They were giving suspended prison sentences and some fines, so I guess they didn't get some crazy punishment, but it is definitely on the criminal record. They're definitely convicted of this stuff they did at Ubisoft, which makes it even more horrendous. Okay, so in this video, we've both gotten deep into a lot of these like weird topics, and we're gonna get even deeper. There's another mod that fell apart, Fallout: The Frontier. This was a massive expansion for Fallout New Vegas, like a snowy open world map, like a new area, drivable cars, new side quests, new storylines. This was the whole package, and people had been hyped for this since like its announcement in 2016, and this mod was in development for like a couple years, and there was like a team of dedicated modders working on it, and eventually the mod released in January of 2021. But within just under 2 weeks, the whole thing was taken down from Nexus Mods because one of the artists was exposed for posting a bunch of COD point pictures on his private blog. Now, that wasn't the only thing people raised an eyebrow about, and once they delved deeper into the game, they realized that all over the game, there's like these weird sexual like aspects that like don't really fit and don't make any sense. With a Deathclaw as an encounter, which like, have you ever, do you know what a Deathclaw looks like, Elijah?
I have no idea what that is.
That's just nasty. I'll send you a picture.
Oh my.
So yeah, that's just disgusting. And there was a whole race of Blizzard people that were just made to be civilized. So this was just like some weird fetish stuff hidden in this big mod. And so they started working on a, like a version that would cut out all this content that was included that people were pretty upset about. And they did eventually get the mod back up after like a month, and it's still there. But I do think it definitely hindered the success of this mod. And also, during that re-uploading process, a bunch of like developers and artists and voice actors, they were like, yeah, I don't want to be associated with this anymore. Just cut me out of the game. So they lost more content over it too. It does have like a decent amount of downloads, but it's definitely not as big as I thought it was gonna be for the amount of hype that went into it before the release. It's just unfortunate. It's kind of like the action of one guy, screwing over the whole project.
Okay, I have 2 questions for you, Luke.
Yeah.
Question number 1. Have you ever heard of the game Squad?
Yeah, maybe. It's like a free-to-play game on PC, maybe?
I don't know. I've never played that, so I'm asking you. I think it's like a milsim.
Yeah, it's like an armor type game. Yeah, for sure.
Now, the second question is, do you remember how for this final level, we said we were only going to look at actual company-wide things, not necessarily individual people?
Yes.
Okay, what if the company is just one individual person and they're really bad?
I mean, that does count, yeah,
I think we need to talk about 0 Hour Interactive. This one's interesting. So originally, that game Squad had a pretty big modding scene and a pretty big modding community. And one group came together and called themselves 0 Hour Interactive, and they released a mod, a really high quality mod known as Aussie, which was like a Squad faction DLC. I want to say it ended up getting spun out to even be something bigger than just a mod project. So, with the huge popularity of that, it was a really big deal when 0 Hour Interactive announced their plans to spin into becoming a full-on game development studio and start working on their own game called Burning Lands, which would have been a tactical first-person shooter game set in Vietnam. There were already controversies surrounding the initial announcement because while the game had been in development for a little bit of time as they were getting things started, and they had up to 25 people working for the company, and they already had possibly some things getting the groundwork for the company started, they launched the game as a Kickstarter project and apparently raised like $60,000 or $70,000. However, shortly after the Kickstarter launched, there was some fallout from many of the team members at 0 Hour Interactive, as apparently a lot of those developers didn't feel like they should be doing a Kickstarter just yet, and that the game wasn't really ready to start talking about just yet. Behind the scenes, there were a lot of things going on. There were a lot of pay disputes amongst the developers, and apparently the CEO, Chance Blair, disallowed his own developers to participate in an AMA that was happening on the Discord for the game, which would have helped the Kickstarter funding. This actually led them to start their own AMA, where they aired a lot of their grievances and maybe some of the dirty laundry of how things were going not well behind the scenes and a lot of the issues that they had with the development due to the leadership at this new studio. Matter of fact, things got even more interesting when it was revealed that the entire development team had walked away from the game itself due to the leadership issues, and they continued on to say that the game wasn't going to happen. So, in turn, it seemed like the CEO, Chance Blair, potentially could have been trying to continue to present the game as an in-progress snapshot. He could get enough funding from Kickstarter to then outsource the game to independent developers who would actually build the game. But it's not like they actually had a team together anymore. But then some other little things came out from Chance Blair's, lore, I guess, involving Zero Hour Interactive, as he was, I guess, the only official developer left at the studio that he was in charge of. In February of 2025, Chance Blair was arrested with charges that included multiple accusations of choking SA, physical assault, and recording and distributing intimate images. And this quickly turned into a very cut and dry rape case in Australia. Now, there hasn't been too many updates specifically from what we can tell. However, a few things that we uncovered when trying to look into this. Now, apparently in February of 2025, Blair faced the New South Wales Supreme Court in a bid to try to get bail after he was arrested all the way back in May of 2024. However, the court brought something interesting up. They looked at the evidence of a lot of the things that had occurred and realized that right after the alleged victim went to the police, Blair sent messages to her on Discord attempting to try to get her to drop the case. In his Discord messages, he said a simple statement like, "I no longer wish to continue with these matters and will not be attending court in March could and will make a massive effing difference, and I'm not trying to pressure you into it. I genuinely want you to make this decision willingly." These messages weren't like publicly available or anything, but they were extracted from Blair's phone following his arrest and the police searching his phone contents. The court justice went on to say that this was a Shakespearean level of manipulation by Blair, and then the Supreme Court judge refused the bail, telling the court that she was not satisfied Blair's time in custody had done anything to change his attitude, and went on to say that she wasn't satisfied that he will not interfere with the victim. Outside of that, I haven't been able to find any big updates. The story kind of gets a little bit lost because it was such a small development studio, so it's not as big name or talked about. So there's not as much updates going on. I did a little bit of digging and I found his YouTube channel where he made ASMR content. And in the context of what we know now, these videos are a little bit creepy. I don't know. Listen for yourself.
Hey, what's up everybody? So it's been a long time since I made one of these kind of videos.
But in the comment section, I did see people saying, "Hey, I heard you're in prison now." Also, a lot of really supportive comments. I don't fully understand if people know the full scope of everything. So he might be in prison, he might not be. I don't think this game is coming out anymore. Just a horrible story all around. But yeah, we don't have the definitive answers as to what the courts decided on this case. So definitively or legally say anything here. You guys see how this is some pretty awful gooner behavior. I mean, beyond gooner. This is straight up felony degeneracy. I don't know. Okay, but let's take a step back, regroup, recalibrate, and talk about a different thing, one that's at least a couple of years more detached. Let's talk about Oculus, formerly Oculus Rift. And there were some accusations of SA from the co-founder Michael Antonov. In 2019, Autumn Rose Taylor made a post onto Twitter revealing an encounter that she had where a person in position of power when VR was new, Michael Antonov, being a creep at an Oculus event. In Taylor's recollection of what happened specifically, they were at the Game Developers Conference VR party, and he approached her offering to give her a private preview of the upcoming Oculus Rift headset before taking her into a private room where he then groped her. Full on wearing a VR headset and getting groped. Probably not a good vibe. That's such a terrible way to word that. I don't know, dude. When this story broke, a Facebook spokesperson did confirm with The Verge specifically that Antonov had left Facebook earlier this year, and Facebook owned Oculus at that point. But that wasn't the only accusations of possibly company-wide creepiness coming from the Oculus division. Katie Kironis talked about how she had worked on several Oculus demos and also had negative experiences with the Oculus team, stating that she was SA'd at an Oculus holiday party in front of about 10 other employees, several of whom instantly came forward to corroborate the story when it was reported to HR. At the time of this being reported, the guy was still working at Oculus. This was also during a time, though, where there was even more scrutiny in the gaming industry than ever before, as more women were coming forward reporting negative experiences and assaults that they had received from other people within the gaming industry. Woo! We made it through the video. Wild Ride. There's a very high chance this video will get demonetized. We are going to try to censor it for its life and try to keep it monetized. But if you want to support our channel, you like these types of videos, the best way you can get more content like this in the future is by maybe throwing a couple of dollars our way every once in a while. Patreon's a great option. YouTube memberships is a great option. You get your name in the credits. We haven't really had a new YouTube member or patron in a while, so if you want to be that person, help us out. But that's it. Thanks so much. A subscription goes a long way too if you're new. We appreciate that too. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.